Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Lone Wolf Podcast. I have a guest on today. We're going to talk about a few things here, but you know what, folks? I got something for you because this might not be Sunday, but I think you all need some Jesus. So that's why I've got this guy on today. I've got Yeti Jesus on the program. This guy reached out to me on Twitter. We've been talking back and forth about some topics here. So, you know, and we actually had a fairly interesting conversation before we got started I want to come back to, but I want to give Yeti the floor here. Yeti, tell us a little bit about you. I think you've got some of your own podcast stuff that you do. So just let us know who you are and what you got going on, man.
My name is Yeti. I'm a Canadian. Most people assume I'm American still, but I actually am the great Great North. I'm in my late 30s. I had a heart transplant when I was 14, so I have a fairly vast experience of living life without an immune system. And like we were talking before, I was like, this isn't something new for immunocompromised people. We've lived our whole lives knowing that the simplest thing could like fuck us up. I had a heart transplant that I got because I caught a flu virus. That's all. I caught a flu virus. I got really sick. It was the size of a basketball when they took me out. I was on life support. I was on breathing tubes. That's why I sound like I do. This is what breathing tubes in extended time in your throat will do to you. This isn't a mockery. This is just what happens when you get a breathing tube too long. You sound like Satan and act like Jesus.
That's a good twist you put on the end of it there, man.
It's funny. I actually, ever since I was young, I'm not a religious person, but I like the idea of like what religion, like theoretically what it was supposed to do. And all it was trying to give people like some kind of value system in which you work together as a group. And so I actually, on my arm, I have a bunch of different religions. I have the Eye of Ra, I have a Guadalupe Mary, I have the Buddha, Ganesh, and of course, good old Jesus.
The man.
And so the idea behind my tattoo was an ode to world peace, because I figured if all the religions can get along on my arm, we might as well be able to get along in this world. And also, if I get up to the gates, I'm pretty covered. Like, oh shit. Oh, Eye of Ra. Oh, welcome to the club. Let me in.
Full coverage, huh?
That's right. I'm insurance for the afterlife.
Yeah. So when I was looking you up, I noticed like it seems like you've got some of your own kind of podcast stuff you were doing, at least there.
Yeah, I was doing a podcast with a couple guys for a while. We haven't recorded for a while. We may get back to it, we may not. It was called Difficult Realities. And it was with my buddy Swerve and my other buddy Spittin'. And so that's on a bit of a hiatus at the moment. But I also am working on some own stuff personally, working with like some independent news groups. Specifically, it's going to be called The Breadlines with Yeti, which I'm going to be doing a combination of teaching people how to bake bread, simple kind of easy baking, so we can start off, as I think it's going to be something good that we're going to need in the relatively near future, especially if shit hits the fan. Stuff like that you want to kind of know how to do. I teach people how to make yeast from flour and water, and all it is you ferment it over like a couple of months, and it builds flavor, and it also builds the bacteria needed to create yeast, right? Because that's all yeast is really it's bacteria, right? So
yeah, that's definitely helpful stuff, man. I mean, the way the world's going nowadays, I've talked a little bit about that on my channel. It's like, you know, the more self-reliant people can become, or able to not have to rely on these big chains, the better off we're going to be. You know, number one, if things, you know, really hit the fan, and, you know, it's good to be able to sustain yourself. But also, even if we don't get to that point, I've been talking about this more recently, the more things you can do to either take care of yourself, like to support yourself, or if you got to give your business to someone, try to give it to someone at a local level. If you've got that ability to do that, and I would recommend doing that, because otherwise you're just giving more and more of your money back to the powers that be at the end of the day.
Yep. That's actually what I did with my previous business is I started a delivery company, and it was kind of like DoorDash idea. It was a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Expanded. We did a lot of stuff. Like it wasn't just food. Like we picked up everything.
Okay.
We did booze delivery and stuff like that. And I started that in 2015. And then when I started getting sick with my mental health before, as well as I need to go for another transplant. So my wife wanted me to kind of pull back. So what I did is I just sold my delivery company to my manager, and he just gave me paid me off monthly, but I didn't charge any interest and stuff like that. He just paid me off for what it was worth over a couple months so that he didn't have to go get a loan or something.
Right.
So, and it worked out well because it was just at the start of the pandemic. So it helped me get through the pandemic while I wasn't working.
Okay. Yeah, man. That's good stuff, man. A lot of what I've been doing, I've even tried to get into some of this myself. I don't have much time for like side business because I've been trying to put more time into this, but I know I made some videos about it last spring and summer. I was, getting ready to start like a garden of my own, and I planted a few fruit trees in the backyard for what we can grow, at least here in South Carolina. I would love to have like some good citrus trees, but you got to have like a greenhouse because our winters just get too cold for them.
Yeah. Well, actually, me and Miss Yeti were discussing that because so when I owned my own condo that I'd bought through low income housing because we had a program out here. So it was kind of cool. But the problem is I couldn't sell it once I got married to my wife. So we ended up keeping a hold on to it. And I rented it out for cheap just to like family and stuff, like not to make any money or anything.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big socialist. Like I don't believe in any particular political ideology, but like by definition, I guess I'm a socialist because I just want to give shit away to people. So I don't fucking know. But so I have my condo that I'm using as my bakery now, but we're going to also work on like some hydroponics and just like interior growing because we have room there. But I want to learn how to grow some like tropical stuff. No sense of growing stuff I can grow outside.
Yeah, man. Like I would love, because I love like tangerines, oranges, even bananas. But I'd have to get something more stable to be able to grow them in. But for right now, I got 2 peach trees.
Nice.
Two red delicious apples, and then 2 Granny Smith apple trees in the backyard.
Oh, those are the best apples.
I love Granny Smith. I planted the red one just for my wife because she doesn't like green apples. So I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah, Miss Yeti's not a huge fan of the Granny Smith either.
Yeah, man. I've ate them since I was a kid. I love them, man.
I love apples, but I gotta use a knife to eat them because one of the weird things about my transplant is my gums got inflamed when I was younger, so I could never like bite into apples. So now I just look like an old man from the 30s because I was just whittling away at my apple.
I've done that before, but I haven't had to do it in a while. But I know what you mean. Like there were times I went to like the dentist and your mouth's just real sore and you try to bite an apple and it just hurts.
Yeah.
So
I had to get my wisdom teeth out not too long ago. So that was kind of fun. I had to get it for like the pre-transplant stuff that I have to go through again. I have to go through like a bunch of other medical stuff. So they're like, oh, you gotta get your teeth cleaned, which worked out because the day before I was going to get my teeth cleaned, I was getting one of my wisdom tooth and it actually broke off. So I was like, oh, that's convenient.
Man, I'm glad I got that done when I was in my teens, man. Like I think I was only around like 16 or so, and they or whenever I had done, but I just remember when I woke up I didn't feel like I was that off, because they cut mine out. But the nurse was like, yeah, well, no, we'll help you out here in this room. I'm like, oh, I can walk. I don't need any help. Like, and I was convinced, man, like, look, I've been drunk, I've been stoned, and I can tell I'm not walking right, but whatever this stuff was, I was convinced I'm walking just like normal. And my mom was like, no, you were all over the place.
Oh man, the stuff they give you in like in dentistry is mint. That stuff will mess you up for days.
I'm telling you, man. It's some powerful stuff. Like I remember when my wife got hers done, we went back there and she's just like sitting in the chair crying. And we're wanting to know why. And she's like, I'm just cold. I'm cold. And she's crying because we're like, oh my God.
I'm so cold. It's so cold. I see the light. Shit.
I've told like my wife though, if she ever watches this, she'd kill me if I told this story. But she was one of those people I was like adamant that she would never try anything marijuana related. It's like how she was brought up, right? And she obviously drank because I mean her family had nothing against that. But I've told her, I'm like, you've got to learn where your limit's at with drinking, because she's one of those that if she gets too drunk, there's three kinds. Okay, there's the party animal, there's the person that gets violent and belligerent, and that could arguably be the worst. But if it isn't that one, it's got to be this one, and which is what I call the tear in my beer drunk. The one that just sits around and cries. And unfortunately, her and my brother-in-law are that kind of drunk, the type that just gets too drunk and starts crying about random shit. It's like
I used to bartend for a living,
so
I've seen all kinds.
I convinced her one time because they came out with like the whole Delta 8, Delta 10 stuff, right, with the CBD market. So she tried it one time and she wound up just like I tried to tell her. I'm like, look, if you don't mind drinking, you're not gonna mind that. And so she tried it, and now that's more of like her go-to to relax after a long day than to pull out the wine bottle or something now, so. But yeah, man, it's interesting stuff. But
I like the well, it's all legalized up here now, so we can get them in like little vape cartridges even.
Yeah, we've got vape cartridges, but we can only get it in Delta 8 or Delta 10. So like the way they did it in the United States is because federally Delta 9 THC is still considered illegal because that's the predominant THC inside of marijuana, right?
It's a class 1 narcotic or something still, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Schedule 1. Yeah. It's it's which is a joke, it's according to the federal government, it is a highly addictive substance with no medicinal value.
Yeah, which is so funny to hear, like American government like, you have to listen to the science, and I was like I know you bastards have completely ignored science for like hundreds of years. Now you want to talk about science?
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're very deceptive with when they choose to acknowledge the science on stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, there's no coincidence that it's time to acknowledge the science when acknowledging the science correlates to big pharma making lots of money.
Yeah, exactly. And people think we're like your conspiracy theorists for saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, that's how the world works. Money. Everyone needs money. It's not a conspiracy.
But when we talk about acknowledging the science with what marijuana can do medicinally, then it's time to ignore the science because that's going to cost big pharma money. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. And you wonder why people in the United States don't want to trust these entities. It's like I tell people, it's like assuming getting the jab is the right thing to do, and you want to convince people of that. you're going about it all the wrong way, because the more deception you throw out there, the more stuff you try to cover up, the less honest with us you are, the less it's going to convince people that pay attention like me that I should do this. You know?
Yeah. Well, and it's human nature. If someone keeps forcing you to do something, 9 times out of 10, you're like, there's some reason this is happening and I don't like it.
Right.
And like, I'm triple vaccinated. I've had monoclonal antibodies. I haven't had the drug which cannot be named, but that's because I have access to better stuff anyways. But it's like, and that's the thing, like, if I had just listened to what media told me, I would have been scared shitless when my doctor told me I needed monoclonal antibodies.
Right.
And the only reason I wasn't scared is because I did my own research,
right.
which has to be the dumbest thing people are arguing against now, because I've never learned anything in my life without doing fucking research myself. That's how we've learned in school. That's how you got through your fancy fucking degrees. That's how you got through everything, was by doing research.
Yeah.
So the fact that people are telling you not to do research now should give you a very good indication that something is not right. Because originally they told us it was the uneducated, the hillbillies, the hicks that didn't know what they were talking about. Now they're telling us not to research things because we're not smart enough to understand it.
Right.
I'm dumb as shit, but I can follow a straight fucking line.
Exactly, man. You know, like what you just pointed out, the hillbillies, the hicks, et cetera, a lot of people would be like, they assume that's exactly what I am, you know, and I'll be the first to say, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to make any statement definitively. What I want to do is raise the points where 2 and 2 is not adding up to 4 for me. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, 2 and 2 should equal 4. And if what you're telling me is not adding up, I got questions.
Yeah.
And as a citizen of the United States, as someone that's paying taxes to fund all these government entities who are telling me the things that are not adding up, I believe I'm entitled to answers.
Yep.
You know? And so the fact that you don't want to give them to me, or you want to change the question and answer it in a deceptive way or whatever, that doesn't help my trust in you at all. I mean, we're dealing with
the Pfizer's like all the studies now can't be peer reviewed.
Right.
They're not releasing information to peer review it. So it's not been a peer reviewed study. So for all those fucking crazy ass liberals that yell about peer reviewed studies, none of the vaccines are peer reviewed studies. So shut the fuck up about that.
Right.
And I don't ever claim to be a scientist. I'm not smart enough to understand molecular biology. My chemistry in high school was shit. I got passed on mercy, but I've been studying history and more specifically propaganda since I was probably 12 years old.
Yeah.
Because at one time, or no, probably more closer to 16. Because when I was 16, I did one of those stupid, like, oh, where does your political ideology go for? And I did it, and it told me I was a communist. And as far as I knew, communist was horrible, but everything I picked was just stuff that I thought would help people. So I was like, all right, clearly I was lied to about that thing. Then as I got older and started to realize, like, I had always in my head had the idea that Europe was like 50, 60 years behind us, living in like the Stone Age, essentially. And then when I started to see pictures, I was like, well, clearly I was led to believe something that wasn't true. So that's when I started to like read more and more about history. and like especially world wars, because I'm very interested in how people work mentally. I used to like go on Facebook and just have arguments with people so I could see how they would react to certain things I would say or certain situations, so that I would be able to better understand how the human mind works.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in humans. I'm interested in human reactions. Like, we're dumb as shit humans. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Animals go around and eat once in a while when they're hungry, and then they sit down under a tree and hang out with their friends.
Right.
We go to work for 8 hours so that we can come home and eat a microwave meal and not get to see our friends for 6 years, because all we got to do is work to pay off the notes that we have on our houses,
right,
or our cars. Like, it's not sustainable for inflation to keep going at the rate it's going, because nobody can afford to base their retirement on the next generation, because the next generation becomes poorer every time we go down. And so you look at the generations that base their whole retirement on selling their homes.
Yeah. It's you brought up a lot of good points there, man. I just try to hit on them real quick. And by the way, if you hear any background noises, I do still have the baby huskies out here, so they get active every now and then. So,
nice, perfect.
Yeah, we've
got
a
husky Akita.
We've got a male and a female husky, and they had a litter of 7 puppies, but we're down to only 3 now, but they're still pretty active. So,
oh yeah.
But yeah, man. So for what you were talking about, just like to hit on the research element there for just a second. You know, I've talked about this a lot, and I've mentioned it to my wife, and at one point to my mother-in-law. Now she's gotten more active into trying to follow what's going on. Unfortunately, I don't think she's stumbled across the best of sources. Now that she has started trying to follow politics more, she's watching a lot of like Newsmax and One American, you know, so she started paying attention, but when she did, she immediately fell into like the farthest of the right wing talking points, you know, which I might agree with some of the stuff they say, but then there's been other things like she's brought to my attention that I'm like, dude, what? For example, she's confident that Trump is going to be named Speaker of the House if the Republicans take back the Congress in 2022.
I don't think the Republicans like Trump that much. I think Trump served his purpose.
Oh,
like, I think they're going to go with
I'm not
DeSantis.
convinced of it either, because you would have to, like, for that to happen, it would have, I mean, technically the rules don't say it can't be done, but you would have to get all of them to kind of be on board with that. And think of the backlash you're going to get from that.
Yeah.
Like, the news already doesn't care for the Republican Party, so you're just going to toss aside the precedents of history to bring someone in that's never even been a member of Congress, you know? And not only that, but like I told her, I'm like, look, I don't know. And I eventually figured out, like, this is stuff they've brought up on those type of shows. Like, they're floating these ideas. And I'm like, look, do you think that someone like Trump with an ego of his size is going to feel comfortable being third in line?
Yeah,
no. If Trump can't be number
guy.
1, he don't want to be there, you know. And to have to sit there when Joe Biden gives a State of the Union beside Kamala Harris and behind Joe Biden, oh, come on. Like, there's no way he'd want to do that. But
I can't believe the Democrats like came up with like one of the most racist fucking probably members of the Senate, and like one of the worst, like what's the word I'm looking for? Kamala Harris. She was like a lawyer. Like, these are the people that they all claim to not want and want to be part of defunding things. And then they go ahead and put them in office.
Yeah. Well,
like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 678 times. All right, you're an idiot.
Exactly, man. I really have a hard time understanding why there are certain people that are just not waking up to what's going on with the Democrat Party. You know, like, I mean, and the Republicans have got plenty of complaint as well, but with the Democrats, they've rigged 2 primaries against Bernie Sanders. Okay. And you're nominating people which, you know, have the charisma, in my opinion, of a sandal. Okay. You know, like Joe Biden, he might have had some sort of a charisma when he could put a good sentence together. But I mean, the guy is struggling now, you know, and I've heard people say,
he's been lying.
Do what?
He's been lying, like, since you can.
God,
imagine. Yeah. Like, you remember the I have a coal miner family thing, right? That's a lie.
Exactly.
And then, like, he graduated, that was a lie in 2004.
In his class too, right?
What's that?
I said he lied about what he graduated in his class too, right?
Oh, yeah. But anyway, he was on Jon Stewart in Indecision 2004, and they discussed where the lie came from. He used that same lie again in 2020. Like, he's admitted it's a lie. He's talked about where the lie came from. He explained why he thought it was true. And then he just goes and does it again. Like,
well, I mean, to be fair, he probably forgot he ever said it the first time, though, you know.
I mean, that's true.
Dementia does that to folks, you know. So.
Yeah.
But
we're weakened at Biden's. We're just having him being held up by other people.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, like, you know, that putting Biden aside, though, you take Kamala Harris. I mean, it's almost like they were just trying to get Hillary Clinton in there because they knew they couldn't put actual Hillary Clinton in there. What's the closest thing we can get? And it was either going to be her, in my opinion, or Amy Klobuchar, and she more or less just pulled herself out of running for it because of, I don't remember what the scandal was, but there was some sort of a scandal that involved her going into it all, and then she basically pulled herself out of consideration. So.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention to the Democrats a whole lot prior to the election.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm like, I get along with more conservative types when I'm having conversations because they tend to be a lot more based in reality. Like, they may be shitty people, but they're at least honest about it. They're going to tell you they don't care about healthcare for you.
Right.
They're selfish people, but I can deal with people that are honest about who they are and where they're coming from, because you can work from that. Exactly. If I'm working from a lie, then you're not going to get anywhere, because you're not working from any sense of reality to begin with.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's like, and I keep referencing this because it just stood out to me so much when I get into this conversation about it. But there was a guy on Twitter when I first got my 2 shots of the vaccine, and I had a reaction to the second one that I kind of went, and then I started hearing other people had similar reactions, but theirs did not stop. That was the thing. So when I started seeing clips of that, I was like, okay, yeah, so something's up here. Like, I want answers. And he's one of the people who started labeling me like, oh, well, you're anti-vax, you're this, you're that. So we started going kind of back and forth for a while on Twitter, and this guy's just out here. Whatever Democrat he can fondle for the day, he wants to do it, right? So basically, he's going on about Trump and how Trump is a threat to freedom and democracy, which is the typical Democrat talking point. Okay, so he's giving the usual there, but then at the same time, he started tweeting about the whole Rittenhouse situation and the people that were involved in the January 6th. What he said about January 6th was that Merrick Garland should start bringing up charges against all these people and Steve Bannon and put them in jail with no bail. Okay. Think about that one. But then what really takes the cake, regardless of how you feel about the Rittenhouse situation?
Yeah.
He said that Kyle Rittenhouse should be sent to Guantanamo Bay, the place where we were torturing the terrorists. So you want to send an American citizen to the place where there was torture and just violate his 8th Amendment rights to no end, yet you're complaining about Trump being a threat to freedom and democracy? I mean, the hypocrisy is just laughable. You know?
Yeah, they don't realize when we talk about freedom of speech and freedom of that's to protect from governments being able to go and lock someone up.
Right.
It's not for my benefit. I don't care.
Yeah.
What are you gonna arrest me for being me? Well, whatever. Fuck it. I don't care. I was like, if the government come and arrest me, it means I was right. So I'm gonna take that with me anyway.
Right. And I mean, it's like Ventura described it years ago. Freedom of speech is supposed to protect unpopular speech, because if what you're saying is popular, nobody's gonna have a problem with it. It's the stuff that people won't agree with, but you have a right to say.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's one of the things they use against China, to use it as a definition of authoritarian, is because they kind of try to keep a control on speech. But the reason they do that is because of stuff like Radio Free Asia. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it once. I know I've heard a lot of Radio Free Germany. I got a feeling from what I get, it's kind of similar, right?
Yeah, it's actually a government, a military, an American military operative. So China does that to keep out influences from countries like the States that will try and disrupt civil society, so that it opens up opportunity for them to come in and essentially profit from the discontent. It's the same thing they're doing with Russia and Ukraine currently, because they want to create unrest in Russia, because the only way for America to win their ratings tank for presidents is to go start a war, because then it artificially inflates the economy.
Right. So since you brought that up, that's one of the subjects that I wanted to touch on there, this whole Ukraine-Russia thing, to lay out some groundwork here. And then I want to get your thoughts on that. We've been hearing a lot about this lately. The issue seems to be with, the Ukrainians are getting armed by us. That's the excuse. And the Russians want to annex Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're putting troops at the border. And so we might have to do this and that. I was watching the Vanguard recently, and they were kind of breaking down something that was going on between Vaush and Kyle Kulinski, which I'm not really a fan of either one of those two, to be honest with you.
They're both idiots.
Right. But that being said, Vaush was basically indicating, that, we should have to give them, the arms, because the Ukrainians aren't going to invade Russia. They're a smaller country, which is probably true. But the thing is, why are we still sticking our noses into this stuff? Because, for one, okay, maybe we're not actively doing it now, but they pretend as if we haven't annexed territories of our own that we wanted. Okay. Yeah. If you got a problem with something being annexed and you think that it shouldn't be done, then I guess we're just going to give back Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, because we did take that from Mexico. Right?
Yeah. Hawaii, Puerto Rico.
Exactly. So we get these territories, and even today, we might not be annexing them to be U.S. territories or states, but quite literally, we're sticking our nose in all over the world to exert our influence even still.
Yep.
And so by that same logic, then how would we retaliate if China or Russia, started arming the people that do have an issue with us. If China started arming Iran, because that seems to be one of the big boogeymen still in the Middle East, right?
Or Cuba.
Right. And of course, Cuba's been our enemy for a long time. But if they started doing these very things, the United States would have a very strong reaction themselves. Okay. And I look at it like this, for the problems that we've got at home, we really need to be focusing on how to fix our own country. If the Ukraine doesn't want to be annexed by Russia, then let the people speak up and start doing something about it. But it turns out, I remember they talked about this years ago during the Obama administration when they annexed Crimea, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, didn't the majority of the people there vote that they wanted to be part of Russia? When that happened. So,
well, even if you go back and look at like the dissolving of the USSR, that was American intervention that caused the USSR to break apart, and that was because they were too strong for America to fight them, so they needed to break them up.
Exactly.
Which is what they're trying to do in China with Taiwan as well. I don't know the whole story about how, like, where China and Taiwan, like, what the legalities and logistics of all that stuff is. I know that's an internal problem amongst themselves that they will be able to deal with on their own.
Yeah, it's that's exactly what I was about to say. Is the United States is still getting involved in all this stuff, and it's to protect our own interest. It's to protect our own our own nation building, our own empire. Okay, yep. That's really what it comes down to. Is the two big threats that are opposite of us are Russia or China, especially China. Okay. And, the thing with China is they've got far more of a control on how much pressure we can really exert over them than Russia does. Okay. The Chinese are manufacturing a lot of the goods that we import at this point. A lot of our corporations have gone over there. They control a decent chunk of our debt. So trying to go to an all-out pissing contest with them is a lot harder when they've got the goods on you. Okay,
they have the means of productions, if you will.
Exactly. Whereas the Soviet Union still had, or Russia, the former Soviet Union, Russia still has enough power that they still can stand against us. For example, I remember like during Obama, there was 1 year that Putin was named the world's most powerful man, not Obama, which is like the first time in however many years that the United States president was not named the most powerful man in the world. So they still pose enough of a challenge that the United States has to look at them and say, well, we've still got to stay ahead of you. And so that's really what it comes down to. And whatever means necessary, they're going to go to do that. But, at the end of the day, the American people need to look at it and say, look, we just got out of a 20-year war with Afghanistan.
Yep.
Okay. And we were already hesitating invading something like Iran,
Somalia,
Venezuela, because of what that could cause. So do you really think trying to provoke war with Russia is a smart idea right now? Like, what the hell are they thinking?
Well, and the problem is most of the American military budget just gets funneled to like rich people. So it's like you have this huge budget and you're like, all right, we can take on anyone. But the fact is the money doesn't actually go to like useful things. So it's like I feel like if they start a war with like kind of what you're saying is like they start a war, it's not going to be pretty for the states, which means it's going to be less pretty for the citizens, which is the real enemy of the states. Is because if the citizens realize how much they've been lied to, the oligarchy that runs the states is in serious trouble.
Right.
Like I'm always a big proponent of we the people, because when shit hits the fan, that's what it's going to come down to, is we the people fixing shit for us and not others.
And that's ultimately why I believe they still try to use all this division and kind of touching back to what I brought up a little bit earlier, with people doing their research. My wife still doesn't follow politics. I mentioned what my mother-in-law got into. My wife still doesn't really care to listen to politics that much. She'll listen to me, but she don't want to do like her own research or anything. You know what I mean? And I told her, I'm like, to me, it is a perfect example of a product of what's currently going on with our system. And what I mean by that is, obviously things like the YouTube, what we're doing right now, social media, while it has good elements, I think ultimately you look at what dominates the conversation. It's the humor videos, the cat video, the epic fail, the stuff that you watch and it's entertaining, but it's not doing anything to make you think more. It's not doing anything to educate anyone or raise important questions. And they don't want that stuff to get out there. And to me, it's like I told my wife, I said, if you listen to politics and you talk about the stuff we're talking about this ain't going to make anybody happy, nope. but it's a conversation that needs to be had. And the problem is they've got all these alternatives. You can watch these cute TikTok videos. You can scroll through Instagram. You can keep up with what your friends are doing on Facebook. Let's not even talk about everything that's on actual TV. It's all there. And it's all more appealing to want to listen to that than to have to talk about all this negative stuff that's going on. It's like alternate reality. Like I can put myself in this shell and I don't have to deal with these, disturbing things that are going on in the world around me. And I can just, artificially keep myself happy and ignore the storm outside. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. And as long as people do that, and then they promote the reliable news source on YouTube, whatever little bit of news you do consume is what they want you to hear.
Yeah, they're not telling you
being
things
bought
that go
and sponsored by Big Pharma, so you're only going to hear their narrative,
Yeah, like of course Big Pharma hates anti-vaxxers, and it costs them money.
Right.
Anyone that says anything remotely derogatory towards like those companies is seen as like anti-vaxxer. Yet Pfizer just paid out over $1 billion in fines for misleading people in fucking studies.
Yeah.
For doing the exact shit we are saying they are doing now. They just got fined billions for it.
I remember, I think it was Jimmy Dore brought that up not too long ago. One of his
shows. He was saying it the other day.
Yeah, I mean, and this ain't nothing new. I mean, hell, Johnson & Johnson had how many problems with like baby powder? Okay, you know,
Purdue and OxyContin.
Exactly.
That case is still ongoing, and you can still buy OxyContin.
Yeah. And considering what they're talking about with the whole opioid epidemic, I mean, OxyContin is some pretty rough stuff, man. I mean,
that is like, that's what brought back the opiate crisis, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're doing something exactly the same as Purdue did. And I'm actually glad I got to bring this up somewhere. So Purdue, when OxyContin, people started to realize it was addictive, what they told people to do is they told them it was because they don't have enough in their system. So that you have to manage the pain, which is the exact same fucking thing as telling us we need to keep taking extra doses of vaccines.
Yeah.
The exact same.
Yeah, and consider they made, around just over $30 billion off the vaccine. Just with the first two shots, I think Pfizer and Moderna.
And that's a lot of money, like even for a fucking massive corporation. Like the music industry doesn't make that kind of money.
Yeah, I've brought that up. They're only getting like $12 billion in profit a year. They got over 30 billion, so they beat. And when we say the music industry, I mean,
we're not just talking about pop.
The whole thing. I mean, start from the top of the charts all the way down to like the bluegrass gospel side of it. Yep. The whole thing made like 12 billion. And just off of those shots, they're raking in 30 billion.
And like, I think because we, as like, I call us peasants because that's basically what it is. We don't understand the concept of billions of dollars. Like, I don't think most people realize that like a billion is 1,000 million. It's hard enough to get to 1 million.
Yeah.
You now found a way to do this 1,000 times over. There is no amount of pulling up your bootstraps or working hard that can justify making that much more money than someone doing 15 hours on an assembly line.
No, and I mean, you know, you think about what you can do with even just $1 million.
Oh yeah.
I mean, good Lord. Me and my wife put together aren't breaking $100,000 a year, and we're still able in South Carolina to afford, you know, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home with a decent little bit of land, and we've got 4 cars. Okay, 2 of them.
So how much did you pay for your house, if you don't mind me asking?
Do what now?
How much was your house? Just that I want a comparison here.
We got ours for right around $65,000 is what we got our loan for. Now, to be fair,
I'm canceling the podcast.
With our market now, we would be somewhere because of everything going up. I think our recent estimates are coming out somewhere between like 80 to 90. Still.
Okay. So yeah, like you remember how earlier I said that I bought a condo through low income housing?
Yeah.
So the purchase price for that was $320,000.
God.
It's an 800 square foot condo with 2 bedrooms.
Dude.
So anyway, but like, so we have our house that my wife bought. We paid just shy of $600,000. It's 1,200 square foot home. Like that, the housing prices up where I live are obscene. Thankfully, the money we make up here is also obscene because we live in a big oil sands. So, like, even when I bought my condo, the poverty line was $100,000.
Right.
Like, that's the poverty line in the town I live in.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, we pay like $7 for a fucking thing of butter, like a stick of butter.
Right.
Right? Like,
you know, that's what I've told a lot of people. Like, you know, now some of my more libertarian friends don't even support the concept of a minimum wage. I'm not on board with that. I mean, I've heard their arguments, and I think they raise certain elements that are good points. But at the same time, I feel like if it wasn't there in general, some people could really get the short end of the stick. But what I would support, what I am against, and I've made this, and a lot of people don't like it, but I mean, to me, I've yet to hear the convincing argument that this doesn't make sense, at least to me, is I don't like a federal government giving a blanket minimum wage because when you've got 50 states and a lot of them have these completely different costs of living, you know, $15 an hour. Now, to be fair, $15 an hour in South Carolina is starting to become more close to a norm, to be fair. Especially since COVID and stuff started, there were places that were paying around 14, 15 an hour that have jumped to like 19 now. So, and then of course, even like fast food, which was minimum wage, now they're getting up to around 10 to 12. You know what I mean? So you're getting closer to that range for sure. But at the end of the day, what we
need to do is, I think, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. All I was going to say is at the end of the day, that ain't doing shit in New York or California. You know what I mean? Their cost of living is so astronomically off from ours. It's ridiculous. So really, they should be using the government's influence the same way they convinced all the states to pass seatbelt laws or to restrict the age of drinking and things like that. Use the government's leverage to make the states pass their own minimum wage laws that are more reflective of what the cost of living is in that state. That's a far better way of going about it than just passing this blanket one size fits all minimum wage.
Yeah, to add on to that, what I think they could even potentially do is do stuff on a percentage systems. So like,
yeah,
if you're going to a restaurant that's like expensive, they have to pay their servers a certain percentage of like either profits or like, obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, but like something along that system so that it's equal in society, not one person gets all the money because they had money first.
Right.
Good idea.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just emblematic. And this is why all these same politicians that just keep holding office turning into mummies slowly over time. It's like we need new people. You know, it's like I've even heard someone say like, oh, I love Bernie Sanders so much he could be 90 years old and run for president. It's like, no, I don't even care what he stands for. Like at some point, we need people who are going to be capable of handling the job, really. And this system is broken, and these are the people that have been running it for years. So,
yeah.
You know,
well, that's the problem is they're doing the job they're supposed to.
Yeah,
it's just not the job we think they're supposed to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're getting bought off by all the special interests. Yeah, they're going in there and doing what the donors told them to do, not what they told us they were going to do. That's the problem.
And one of the things about the monopoly that has been built is at one point, like there was 1,000 or there was a huge number of like big corporations. Over the last 20 years, that's basically shrunk down to like 10. So now you have essentially 10 people that can control the wages, the prices, the cost. Also, more than likely, they're friends with the people that do the shipping. So they'll go to their friend and be like, hey, can you drop the price for me on this thing so I can sell for a bit cheaper? But then in 5 years, they start putting the price back up because they put everyone else out of business.
Yeah. Well, and that's, and that's what I've told, like, what we talked about a little while ago. Let me back up and go with that, because we talked about like with supporting small business, right? I brought that up the last time I was on Frank Analysis, and someone in the chat, I don't know who it was, said, why should we help save small and local business owners? They were paying starvation wages pre-pandemic. We owe them nothing. Are they wrong about the whole pre-starvation wages? I would say no, but I think there's more nuance to that conversation. For
Very
example,
much.
Okay, like now what they did advocate, they said we need more worker co-ops. Okay, I'm not against that. I've heard the argument for it. I have no problem with that. But what do you do if you don't already have them? Like we got two choices here, and some people have no choice. Some people just have big chains around. That's, without driving way out of the way, that's all they've got. And if that's all you've got, I'm not going to tell anyone starve themselves to death. No, do what you got to do to survive. I mean, if that's all you've got to buy your groceries from. Well,
and you have to, I don't think people realize that these people are also in the same system that we don't like. Exactly. So they are trying to bet their best to do what they think they're supposed to do to get like either get ahead or just like survive like the rest of us.
Or right? Even in some cases doing what they have to do. Like this is the case because I had a guy, one of my libertarian buddies, I just had him on recently, Reed Coverdale, the naturalist capitalist. And we were talking about that. And I said, this is the problem. Like people, the way this system is geared to operate, they're not taking in what it costs for that guy. So, first of all, the small guy has got to work on a more tight budget potentially than a massive corporation. Okay. Massive corporation wants to come in and dominate everything and run out the competition. Now, one of the things that they can do to help with their prices are they're able to order their supplies in a much larger quantity than the little guy can. Okay. If you've ever noticed, if you buy one thing You know, and you don't even have to think of it in terms of buying hundreds. Okay. Have you ever gone to the store and it's like buy one, get one more half off?
Yep.
Okay. The more of it you buy, the more of a deal that they are willing to probably cut you. You end up saving money. Like you could buy 6 full price, or if you buy that much with this sale, we're going to chop that down for you. It'd be cheaper than buying 6 at full price. Okay.
Yep.
That's how that works. So when the little guy has a small store, he can only hold so much. He can't afford to buy such massive amounts of stock, you know, at one time. He can't buy but so much food. He can't buy but so many clothes or whatever it is he's selling, you know. So that, number one, is going to affect how much he's having to pay to get the stuff in, which then means he's got to still make a profit after that. So now I got to mark whatever I paid for it up to make a profit, whereas they got it for cheaper. And they've got a budget of millions to billions of dollars or whatever backing them up. They can still sell it for less than me automatically, but they can even take it further down, take less of a profit just to run me out of business and get me out of town. You know what I mean?
That's actually how Walmart works.
Exactly.
That's actually Walmart's business practice. Exactly. And they do it. What they do is they do it with CDs. Yeah. Because CDs, and like at the time, people would come in specifically to buy a CD, right? Because you're like, oh, Walmart's going to have it. They always fucking have everything.
Yeah.
So people will come in to Walmart and buy a CD because it's cheaper. But when they're in Walmart, they'll buy a bunch of other stuff, right?
Right.
So that's the business model. So Walmart will sell their CDs for $5 less than what they buy them for, because it will bring people in. So no matter how much a small business tries, you can't compete because you can't sell things for less than you make.
Yeah.
That's also how Jeff Bezos built Amazon.
Exactly.
And why he didn't show any profits for almost 10 years while simultaneously becoming a personal billionaire.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's they're thinking of that in a chess game. Like we'll take that hit long enough to become such a powerhouse that nobody can compete with us. And then when we run them all out of business, now we can do whatever we want with this price.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
It's like we're playing snakes and ladders and they're playing some kind of quantum physics chess.
Yeah. And and this is what I told him. I'm like, when you think about the wages that the mom and pop shop can pay, if he's already having a hard time keeping up with the price just on how we're selling this stuff and what I'm paying for that. Now, one of the only ways I could try to keep that price down, if I'm already having to take minimum profit off of this to keep the price somewhat in the same ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Then if I'm going to pay you well above what Walmart's paying you, that's even more money coming out of my pocket. To compensate that, I've got to take the price probably even higher. You know, I mean, now, is that the case for every small business? No, but when you break it down, it makes logical sense when they're having to compete against such a crooked powerhouse as Walmart. It's really handcuffing you to what you can do to be able to make your own profit now. And if you want to stay afloat, you got to try to figure out how to roll with these punches and play this game, or you're going to go out of business.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe that's where you were saying, like you were talking about the worker co-op. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something where utilizing that business model will allow you to get things cheaper by expanding your purchasing power.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So
it's still going to take a lot to fight Walmart. But I say we just go and take Walmart back.
But definitely, this was my argument, and I said this on Twitter. I'm like, so, you know, we're not supposed to support the small business owner who doesn't have the money to bribe politicians, but we're not going to support him because he pays starvation wages. We should instead do what? Just keep giving our money to the rich and powerful so they can become even more rich and powerful and finish taking control of everything?
Yeah, and that comes back to like simple propaganda of pitting us against someone else.
Exactly.
And that's all propaganda really is just, oh, you need to watch out for that person over there. I need to protect you. So you need to feed me theoretically, either monetarily or food.
Yeah.
And so that I can protect you against the big bad boogeyman.
Yeah, and real quick, because I know there's a topic that you want to talk about, but this just occurred to me, and I'm actually going to be making a video talking about this on my own pretty soon. But I thought it would be a good time to bring it up since we're talking about the current system we have in the job market. But man, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch this yet or not. Maybe you haven't even heard about this one yet. But how about this mess in Wisconsin, where you got the judge ordering the hospital staff that they're not allowed to quit their jobs?
Oh, I did see that. That is fucking bullshit.
You think? Like,
yeah, I think I made a post about that. And I basically told them, I was like, this is what slavery is.
Yeah, it's literal fucking slavery. And one of the reasons that you get the Republicans and the conservatives citing all the time why a national healthcare system would absolutely fail is, or wouldn't be a good idea, or whatever they want to say, is because it would make the healthcare workers slaves. Well, your current system apparently is already doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, they always use that argument that it's capitalism is freedom. Capitalism was built on slavery. That was the very basic principle they built the entire system on. Getting labor as cheap as possible.
Yeah, it's you know, so some of my more libertarian friends are probably going to disagree with that on this, because I look at it like this. You know, I looked at it and I've said, you know, I recognize some of the arguments for capitalism, how in some ways it can be good if it's done right.
There is good elements that capitalism has brought around.
But at the same time, I can recognize certain good elements when it comes to socialist ideas as well. Yeah. I've always looked at it as I'm more in favor of a version of a mixed economy more than just straight. And I look at it like this, man. I'm like, you know, no disrespect to the people who are bought and sold on the ideas that, you know, completely unchecked capitalism works or completely unchecked socialism works. I mean, I'm sure they've got their reasons, but I look at it like this and I'm like, you know, why do we have to isolate ourselves to just one ideology? You know, there have been very smart people who have articulated why they think these benefits work. And we can recognize those benefits, but if you're being honest, there's also drawbacks to both sides. And so you look at that and you say, why can't we try to find a way to get the benefits together and get rid of these negatives and try to make a better system?
Yeah.
For a layman like myself, that just makes sense. But, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're at a part in like technology wise, especially, that we can make the world quite a bit easier. And if you really want to get like down to like the very basics, money is just a concept we invented.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like if we just got rid of money tomorrow, it wouldn't actually like change anything. Like, nothing would just disappear if we didn't have money. It's just something we use as a form of currency to exchange goods, which is just bartering.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Long before there was cash money, the people bartered all the time.
Yeah, like it's basically a mentality that we, as a society, if we ever can break through it, I think we'll actually get a lot farther ahead, because I think we have enough technology now, even to like make sure we can get like power to anywhere in the world. Like, there's tribes all over the world. They may not want power. They may want to live their life exactly how they want. Exactly. And if that's what they want, go for it. Yeah. I'm not here to tell people how they can live. Yeah. I think people should be able to live how they value best. And as long as it's not affecting or disaffecting someone else, then they should be okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, man. But I know there was a subject. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give the disclaimer. I've heard this subject talked about some. I think my buddy Franco's talked about it a couple of times. But this is not a subject that I'm extremely familiar with. I've tried to read up a little bit, when you brought it up to me, but Yeti wanted to bring up some stuff about like the Uyghur Muslims, for example, over in China. And, I've heard what little bit I've read on, again, I've heard the pushback that this is deception. It's not true. The mainstream media narrative on this really just seems to be that these people are getting heavily oppressed, that China's basically trying to wipe them out, almost like a genocide and things. One of the videos that I even pulled up, just to see what they were saying is like, oh, these people go to places and they disappear and never come back. So you're hearing a lot of that stuff as like the mainstream narrative talking about China. But I do know that for some of the people in the indie media space that study into that, they seem to have a different opinion. They seem to think this is more typical deception, trying to hide the facts, much in the same way, as a matter of fact, because I'm wearing my Julian Assange shirt here, much in the same way they want to smear that guy. Well, what did you say?
I said, free that man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, thank God he won that appeal recently. So, hopefully there'll be some more victories over there. But
I know sarcasm is pretty pumped. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, but tell me a little bit about that, because I now that you're on the show, I'm curious to learn. If it's something I don't really even know that much about, I'm always curious to learn. So what do you got that point out?
One of the things is I'm really bad at pronouncing the name. I think you said it's an Uruguay, I cannot pronounce the name very well. However, what is happening is the same thing where we talked about during like weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
Americans are basically, they found someone to be a source that said all these atrocities are happening in the country, in China, towards the Muslims. And they originally referred to it as genocide. Then when people realized there's clearly nobody being murdered, which is what genocide is, they started calling it cultural genocide, which means they're trying to take away their culture, their religions, those type of things, which is also a blatant lie. There is people they have in jail. That's right. Not a lie. That happens everywhere in the world, and that's how we have civil society. America is the world's biggest prison population. They have 330 million. China has billions and has less, by far, per capita people in prison in this supposed authoritarian regime.
Right.
But back to the Uruguay Muslims. There is no genocide happening. None whatsoever. It's a blatant fucking lie. There's actually, and even if you look at the Han population versus the other population, the Han population, which is the major people in China, their population growth is less than the Uruguay Muslims. So if the supposed genocide was happening in either their culture or outright killing them, that would not be possible to happen. It's just not. There is no concept of genocide where the people committing the genocide are seeing less population growth than the people supposedly being murdered.
Right. Yeah. What you brought up with like a cultural genocide, it makes me think, because if we're going to complain about other people doing that, well, I'm going to go way back in history for just a second, but I'm going to bring it back up to modern times before we're done here. Last I checked, when we were forcing people into slavery, we were taking their names, taking their last names, giving them those slave names, as people, have always talked about. but and then also forcing more of our religion off onto them. And that's something that's really continued well into this day, because while the United States is a predominant Christian country, part of your Bill of Rights includes having the freedom of religion.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the Bill of Rights is there to protect really the rights of the minority. Just like freedom of speech is to protect the unpopular speech, the Bill of Rights is there to protect the minority in a way, when you think about it, because if everybody in the majority had the same belief on what's right and wrong, why would they ever have the rights infringed?
Yeah.
So,
and even on the topic of slavery, you go back in time, they're guaranteed there was people during that time that were trying to tell people that slavery was wrong, and they were getting told they were conspiracy or crazies because they wanted Black people to be valued the exact same as the white people.
Or that it would just be too detrimental to the
that
system of trade. They looked at it in money terms too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, they were seen as property.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, we don't agree with the concept that this should be going on, but ultimately, if we free them, it's going to be detrimental to our market for trade, and we don't have the people to do what we've been churning out now. Like, the southern fields of the South wouldn't have the same amount of production if they just freed the slaves. So, that's what that turned into. And so ultimately it drug out as long as it did. But I mean, even in the modern times, ever since you've had the things like 9/11, you've had a lot of this Islamophobia.
Yep.
And they sign petitions because there's a mosque in a town and it bothers the people and they don't want to see it,
Yeah, and CNN, and specifically that fucking Don Lemon, is a huge part of the anti-Muslim rhetoric in the States, because this goes back how far I've been. Like, I've got receipts for how angry I am about racism and shit, going back like my Facebook stuff. Because I have a post where I called out Don Lemon when he told his Muslim guests that he bears responsibility for ISIS because they share the same religion. And I was like, you race-baiting son of a bitch. And he's done it numerous times. And I can't understand why people think Don Lemon is some kind of great person. He's an absolute piece of shit.
Yeah, completely, man. I mean, that's making that argument and using that sort of logic would be no different than me saying I'm responsible for my ancestors from the South that were slave owners.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or even Christian, like, because, I was raised in a Christian family, even though I'm not a Bible thumper, I don't like overly religious people, but because I still have an element of that in my life, I'm responsible for the freaking Crusades.
Yep.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like we cannot hold everyone responsible for history because we're not going to get anywhere as a society doing that.
No. History is there not to try to find people to blame for it in the present time. History is there to learn from it, to move into a better way for tomorrow is the way I look at it. And even if something happens today, like that, if some Christian radical nut goes out and does something crazy, I'm not going to blame the other Christians around for it, just because you consider yourself a Christian. And that's what a lot of society stuff that we've got nowadays, not necessarily toward the Christian side of it, even though some do that too, but you get it a lot with the Muslim community. You get it a lot with the Hispanic community, the Black community. You get a lot of these things where they find these elements or they find these characters that fit the mold that they want to make fear campaigns on. And then they want to just brand the whole group like, well, you need to be doing something about this then,
Yeah. Well, I remember in 2016, the first time I seen someone start calling the GOP Nazis, I was like, I know exactly where we're going with this. And the thing that scares me the worst is I've been so fucking accurate about it too. And I'm like, I made a post. I was like, we're only about a month away from having the unvaccinated referred to as unclean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
it's,
said that a year ago that it's going to happen, and I'm waiting for it, and I don't want to be right. But if history has shown me anything, it's that I'm not as dumb as I try to tell people I am.
yeah. I mean, it's really surprising how, you know, just normal folks like you and me and many other working class people out there have the common sense to see what's coming from a mile away.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like I studied history. That's what I like. Right. Like, so I'm like, just by virtue of always reading about history and stuff, I've started to see patterns. And it's just like I can see them happening because I've invested so much time reading about them.
That and even more than that, I mean, yeah, the history is going to help. But if you've been around in this world and you've ever listened to a lot of times your parents or your grandparents, if you grew up in the working class community, you know about how many different times the government has just raked you over the coals.
Yep.
You know the things they've done in the past and the way they've spoke to try to convince you of something only to screw you over. You know those patterns. You know what you're looking for.
Well, also, my mom is a very narcissistic and a very controlling kind of personality. So I'm used to dealing with those type of people. Like I know what they're doing because because I dealt with 37 years of it dealing with my family, right? Like it's like, and that's kind of what started to clue me into like figuring out what my mom was doing and what the news was doing is I started to see the pattern of the crossover and I was like, got that proverbial light bulb that went off.
Right.
I was like, that makes more sense now.
Yeah, man. Well, looking at the time, I think we're pushing up on an hour and a half here. And I got to be honest with you, man, this conversation, I could keep talking to you for a while, honestly.
Oh, I love talking, man. This is my jam. I don't shut up. My mom always used to tell me, she's like, I think you talk to hear your own voice. And I was like, yep.
I've actually been told the same thing. No. So, you know, I mean, just to try to keep it so that we can get some good views on this thing, we're going to try to wrap it up here with this. I'm going to let you have some final, the closing word here. Let us know if you got anything going on you want us to check out. But, man, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to have you back on the show because I feel like there's a lot more we didn't touch today that we could, man.
Oh, no, I'm game for this, man. This has been a lot of fun. I like doing stuff like this.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, just let us know what you got going on. Give your, Twitter, everything a shout out. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me at Yeti1181 or Yeti Jesus. On YouTube, I have a channel called The Breadlines that I haven't uploaded any videos yet. I have done a quick precursor on my Twitter just to explain what I'm going to be doing. That is going to be coming out right away. Other than that, I just want people to understand it's we the people. All the power we have is in the hands of we the people. And never forget that, because there's no amount of billionaires that will be able to tell billions of people what they can and can't do.
Completely agree with that, man. And yeah, definitely go over, give them a follow on Twitter. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below. And let me know when you get ready to get that channel launched and everything, man. I'll definitely get out there and give you some promotion on that because it sounds
all right. Much appreciated. Much love, guys, everyone.
Yeah. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, want to thank Yeti for coming on. We're definitely going to have him back pretty soon because, again, this has been a great conversation.
I'm going to do my wall a little nicer.
Well, mine's going to be changing up before too long because this will soon be a baby nursery.
Oh,
I've actually got a new studio under construction, I guess we'll say. It's built, but I just got to finish the final touches, so.
Right on. Well, congrats on the new edition too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So yeah, if y'all like this, make sure you're giving that video the thumbs up and drop the comments down below. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Lone Wolf Podcast. Take care, everyone.